Okay, Denise, I'd really like to welcome you, and people online, I'd like to welcome you as well. My name is Eleanor van Gerven, and I am Program Manager of the Dutch National Knowledge Center on Gifted Education. And in that capacity, we're here today. The Knowledge Center has organized this webinar, and Denise was so kind to say immediately when I asked her, "Oh, sure, I want to do that. I'm happy to do that." So, Denise, a very, very warm welcome from the Netherlands to you, coming from Brazil, and maybe to put our minds a little bit at rest. Just like us is Denise, an English is second language. So therefore, don't be afraid that if you ask a question that your English will not be good enough. We're all English second language speakers, so bear with us when things are a bit difficult. We will try to work it out with you. And you can even ask your questions in Dutch, and I will try to translate them as good as possible to Denise. Denise, would you be so kind to introduce yourself? Because I think you can do a far more better introduction than I can do, whatever.
Okay. Thank you, Eleanor, for the invitation. I'm delighted and very honored to be here to present this webinar on creativity. I'm Denise Fleith. I am a psychologist. I am a professor and a research in the Institute of Psychology at the University of Brasilia in Brazil. I have been working in the creativity field for around 30 years, I would say. And
Hold on, there's someone using a mic. Please keep your mics out. Yes.
Okay. I've been working in the creativity field for almost 30 years. So it's a field that I'm passionate and I enjoy. And I think nowadays it's very, very important to develop our creativity. So let me see here. Okay. Oops. Okay. So why invest in creativity?
Oh, Denise, something goes wrong now with your mic. Please turn on your mic again.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So why to invest in creativity? According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, to meet the challenge of the century, students need to develop what they call transformative competencies, such as thinking innovatively and creating new values, all of which require investing in creativity. So creativity has been considered an essential 21st century learning skill. It means that students need to learn to ask questions, not only to solve problems, to think divergently, to collaborate with others, deal with contradictory ideas, and have an open mindset. Recently, I'm sure you have heard about it, creativity thinking has become the focus of the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA. This change reflects recognition of the importance of new and innovative ideas for society worldwide to evolve. Because until now, just they evaluate mathematics, reading, and science. So now they propose to assess creativity, and they have already evaluated the first in the first year. For example, Here we have some results of the PISA, the creativity assessment. Singapore, Korea, Canada, and Australia are the highest performing system in creative thinking, with an average student score of 37 score points or above. It is significantly higher than the OECD average, which is 33 scores points. And students in Singapore achieved an average score of 41 points. So one of the highest performance system in creative thinking. Most of the countries, that's very interesting, most of the countries and economies that score above the OECD average in creative thinking also outperformed the OECD average in mathematics, reading, and science. That's very interesting. And a very good information, data for future research. Here we can see we have some table. They are not very clear, but as you can see, for example, on 32 position, the Netherlands scored 32 points, just below the OECD average. However, this score is not statistically significant different from the OECD average. On the other hand, my country, you can see here, Brazil, scored very lower, 23 points. And so here we have other, as I mentioned before, Singapore is the top regarding creativity, students' creativity, and Korea, Canada, and Australia. And the lowest score points, Albanian, Philippines, Uzbekistan, Morocco, Dominican Republic, and Palestinian Authority. Here we have, these are some recently results of PISA assessment of creativity. So my question is, what's the role of the schools in fostering creativity? How can school prepare their students to appreciate different perspectives, interact respectfully with peers, and take responsible actions towards supporting a sustainable environment and individual and collective well-being? Here we have some suggestions. We can think at the research level, in the production of evidence-based knowledge. We can think at the legislation and education policies level. We can think of change the school culture towards the school climate that favors creativity. And finally, we can help teachers to understand how creativity can be identified and the circumstance that encourage it. So here we have some suggestions. I will describe them in detail later. So it's important to discuss what is creativity. How can we define creativity? So as you may say, there are many ways to define creativity, to conceive creativity. And so there are many models of creativity that we can implement to understand the construct. So despite the fact that there are many models of creativity, almost all of them agrees that multiple components must converge and interact for creativity to occur. So we are talking about a multidimensional construct. So we can mention the importance of personal factors such as personality, cognitive styles, thinking styles, motivation, but we cannot neglect the role of the environment in fostering or inhibiting creativity. So society values, zeitgeist, constraints, social practice, for example, influence the extent to which creativity is fostered in a given society, in a given culture. So I like this quotation from Csikszentmihalyi, an American, actually he was a Hungarian researcher, but he used to live in the US, and he said, we cannot study, we cannot understand creativity by isolating individuals in their works from the social and historical milieu in which their actions are carried out. I agree. Now, we cannot think of creativity without consider these interactions of individual characteristics and environmental factors. So I'd like to talk about why to identify creativity, why to assess creativity, why teachers should be encouraged to assess creativity in the classroom. So here we have some suggestions. So when we assess creativity, we can help instructional planners evaluate the effects of educational materials, curricula, programs, and practices that support educators in developing classroom strategies that promote creativity. So we can access the extent to which some intervention, some curricula, some programs have been effective in promoting creativity. We also can provide students with formative feedback, raising their awareness of their own potential for creativity and enable them to take actions to nurture it. So I think it's important to provide conditions that the students raise their awareness of their potential for creativity. They have to be aware of their potential and how they can go ahead. How can they promote, develop their creativity? And finally, why to assess creativity? To promote the establishment of a school culture that values creative expression, recognize its importance, and ensures a psychologically safe environment in which students' ideas and interests are welcome. So I personally believe that the international assessment of creativity by PISA may help countries worldwide to value creativity, creating an atmosphere that encourages students to pursue innovative outcomes. At least schools will feel pressure to invest in creativity. So why to assess creativity? I believe that it's a powerful and a useful tool for guiding educators, first, to deconstruct myths associated with creativity, to identify students' potential, especially those that might go unnoticed, to plan appropriate instruction, and to identify areas where professional development may be needed. Very often, there is a gap between teachers' perspectives on students' creativity and the application of practice that encourage creativity in the classrooms. So to identify procedures and instruments used to assess creativity, myself and a colleague, Daniela Vilarinho Pereira, we conduct a study where we conduct a systematic review of literature on creativity assessment in the education in the Web of Science database. So our search was limited to articles published between 2018 and 2023, and 4 key journals that publish articles in creativity. For example, Creativity Research Journal, Journal of Creative Behavior, Psychology of Aesthetics, Creativity and the Arts, and Thinking Skills and Creativity. And we identified 258 articles that potentially met our criteria, inclusion criteria. After assessing the article's full text for eligibility, we include 122 articles in our analysis. So in this 122, 208 instruments or methods were identified. 208 instruments. So there are many instruments that have been used to assess creativity in the research. And the majority of these instruments were assessment tests, like the Torrance test of creative thinking, the creative thinking drawing production by Huban and Welling, the evaluation of creative potential by Lubert, the epoch developed by Lubert and colleagues, and the figural divergent thinking tests. And we realized that self-assessment was the next most frequent used approach. For example, the Rank-Eisenhower behavior scale, the short scale of creative self, and the biographic inventory of creative behavior. So these are the most used instruments in creativity research until 2023. We also see product-based approach were adopted in 29 studies, such as the consensual assessment techniques by Amabile. It's a very, very known approach to assess creativity, the CAT, and the creative solution diagnosis scale by Cropley and Kaufman. Regarding qualitative approach, such as observations and interviews to assess creativity, only 18 studies have implemented this approach. And finally, very few rating scales were used in the study select. Only 3 used rating scale. So to assess creativity, so far the researchers have used tests and self-assessments. So we can ask, why to assess, and most of them assess individual creativity. Okay, so I'd like to ask you, why to assess students' level of creativity only? Is it enough just to assess the level of creativity of our students? Why not to assess the climate for creativity in the classroom? Since, according to Csikszentmihalyi, as I mentioned before, it's easier to enhance creativity by changing the conditions in the environment than trying to make people to think more creatively. So our proposal here is to discuss, is to go beyond, not only to focus on assessing individuals' creativity, but assessing the climate for creativity in the classroom. Remember that we cannot neglect the role of the school in fostering creativity. And I like this Mabel's quotation. She said, of all the social and environment factors that might influence creativity, most can be found in some form in the classroom. So I'd like to present to you some instruments developed, designed to assess the classroom climate for creativity. One of them we developed here in Brazil, and the first one is the Classroom Climate for Creativity Scales with 22 items, and the audience is third and fourth grade students. So these students will evaluate the classroom climate for creativity. Then this instrument includes 22 items to be answered on a 5-point scale, range from never to always. And we decide to represent this point, the scale, the point scales by 5 half faces of graduate sizes, because the children are younger, so I think it would be more fun, more interesting for them to understand. So here goes never, never to always. And this instrument assesses 5 factors: teacher supports to students' ideas expression, students' self-perception on creativity, students' interest for learning, students' autonomy, and teachers' incentive to the production of students' idea. Here you can see the front page. We ask the students to say something about their age, their gender, their grade, and here we have some instruction how to respond to the instruments. And see here we have some of the items. For example, in my classroom, the teachers pay attention to my idea, so they can mark from never to always. In my classroom, I have a chance to participate in many activities. My ideas are welcome. I try to do things in different ways, and so on. So there are 22 items. So third and fourth graders can assess the climate, the classroom climate for creativity. Another instrument is it's the inventory for teaching practices for creativity and higher education. Here is for university students, so the audience is college students. And this instrument consists of 37 items rated on a 5-point scale, range from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And this instrument assesses 4 factors: incentive to new ideas, climate for expression of ideas, evaluation and teaching methodology, and interest for students' learning. I have been asking for research from other parts of the planet to use to validate these instruments in other cultures. So it has been very interesting to interact with research interested in assessing the climate, the classroom climate for creativity. So here we have the front page with the instructions. And then here we have some items. So as the college, the students have many subjects. They can access each professor in each subject. For example, in general, the professor in my educational psychology class cultivates in students interest concerning new discoveries and new knowledge, encourage students to examine different aspects of a problem, encourage students' initiative, promotes students' self-confidence, value students' original ideas, etc. We have 37 items of these instruments. Another instrument that was recently developed in the United States to assess the extent to which classroom practice have fostered students' creativity, imagination, innovation was developed by Rizzulli and colleagues. Is the Imagination, Creativity, and Innovation Instruments. And this instrument assesses three factors, of course: creativity, imagination, and innovation. It includes 15 items rated on a 5-point scale, range from never to always. Here we have some examples of the items of this instrument. So, for example, teacher receive this item, and she or he has to respond using the scale from never to almost always. For example, you encourage students to view topics from multiple perspectives. You encourage your students to come up with their own ideas. You encourage students to consider new possibilities. So it's interesting because here we have other items of the same instrument, and the student is also invited to access the classroom climate for creativity. So the instrument have a teacher version and a student version. So here we have some examples of the student survey items. For example, my teachers asked me to look at things in different ways. My teacher asked me to come up with my own ideas. My teachers asked me to think of things that might happen, to think of my own way to look at things, to imagine the things, and etc. Here we can see the authors of the instrument have presented a graphic matching teacher-students comparison, because the instrument, they try to compare if there are similarities and difference from the teachers and the students' perspective. So they compare teachers' predictions of the students' rates to their actual student rates. And you can see that here predicted, ideal, and actual. Students report more, for example, students report more opportunities on average than that teachers predicted. Okay, so here we can see ideal, predicted, and actual. And you can see students' response in red, and teachers' predictions in green. Okay. And you can see that the students report significantly less opportunity for imagination, creativity, and innovation on average than the teacher's ideal. You can see that students' response in red, ideal, and predicted. So the assessment of students were lower than compared to students, compared to teachers' response. For example, on item 1, encourage students to view topics from multiple perspectives. Students rated higher than teachers. Okay, it means that they see more opportunities in classroom to examine topics from multiple lenses than teachers predict, student, teachers. On the other hand, on item 5, encourage students to use their imagination. Students rated well lower than teachers predict, students and teachers. It means that the teachers believe they are fostering students' imagination, but the students did not agree. So these are some of instruments to assess not only the individual's creativity, but also the classroom climate for creativity. So, okay, we talk about assessing creativity. How about fostering creativity in the school setting? How can we do that? So, although creativity has been considered an essential competency to equip youngsters to deal with the challenge of the century, what we can see from the research, teachers have faced difficulties in transferring what they know about creativity to their practice. Teachers know that it's important to promote creativity in the classroom, but sometimes they don't know how to do it. They don't know the instruments, the materials, the resource to do this. Some of them felt unprepared for this task or considering foster creativity outside the scope of their responsibilities. Also, at least in my country, Brazil, we face limited reserved and in-service professional development opportunities. Very few teachers have the opportunity to learn about creativity. So how can they foster creativity? So also, especially I would say in developed countries like Brazil, teachers have to teach vast amounts of content. They have vast amounts of content to be covered. So they don't have time to focus on creativity development in the classroom. And I would say not only Brazil, but in other countries, such as the United States, the emphasis is on academic achievement, not on the development of creative ability. So how to foster creativity in the school setting? So I'd like to talk about two possibilities, two procedures. The first one is to teach creatively. And the second one is to teaching for creativity. Maybe someone thinks it's the same, I'm talking about the same procedure, but there are some slightly differences. For example, teaching creatively focus on the teacher's practices, while teaching for creativity casts light on learning, thinking, and behaviors. So, of course, both processes are interconnected and help to promote creativity in the classroom. So, teaching creatively focus on teacher attitudes, actions in the classroom, and teaching for creativity focus on what behaviors, abilities, competencies are expected students to develop, to learn. So the first one, we focus on teachers. The second one, we focus on the students. So how to teach creatively? Here we have some suggestions. So teacher can provide learning experience that are meaningful and enjoyable to the students. They can provide learning experience that are in line with their abilities, interests, and learning preferences. And this is very important when you talk about gifted and talented students. Also, they can provide opportunities for students to learn within the context of real-world problems. to choose problems they are interested in investigating, protecting the students' creative work from destructive criticism, and giving students meaningful feedback instead of vague, abstract evaluation. So the feedback has to be detailed. In a study I have, in a study that I have conducted with elementary school teachers, which is published in the Roper Review, about the perception of creativity in the classroom environments, the results indicate that both teachers and students believe that a classroom environment that enhances creativity provides students with choices, accepts different ideas, boosts self-confidence, allows students free times. I remember that when I interviewed the students, they mentioned bonus Friday. It was when they could choose what to do for 1 hour on Fridays. They love it, this possibility to choose what they want to do. And the focus on students' strengths and interests. On the other hand, in environments that inhibits creativity, ideas are ignored, teachers are controlling, mistakes are not allowed, one right answer is required, and excessive structure exists in the classroom environment. This data was obtained through interview with teachers and students. Okay. So teaching creatively requires from teachers attitudes such as be tolerant of students' errors, reward courage as much as you right in protecting students from criticism and pressure to conform, provide ample time for students to think of new ideas, take students' questions seriously while being appreciative of humor, value creative behaviors, products, and ideas, welcome different perspectives, have positive expectations of their performance. Here, there are some suggestions of how teachers' attitudes can foster creativity in the classroom. So how about teaching for creativity? What do you expect from students? So what kind of behavior, ability we expect from our students? So it's important to encourage students to think of many original and meaningful ideas, to accept the challenges and defend their ideas, to analyze a situation from different viewpoints, to explore future consequences of actions, to see overlaps and similarities, to generate main ideas, to see contradiction and gaps. These are some examples of how to teach for creativity. Here we have to use all sensory inputs, to ask a question, to defend their ideas. And I'd like to talk about the curriculum as well. So we cannot ignore the role of the curriculum in fostering creativity in the classroom environment. So what characteristic of curriculum should also be considering in planning ways to prepare students for creative productive? So here we have some suggestions of a curriculum that can foster creativity. For example, it should address real-world problems. It should relate to learning experience. it should be flexible, it should present content multimodality, it should emphasize the value of social-emotional skills, it should appeal to their imagination. Talking about curriculum that appeals to students' imagination, I'd like to share with you some activities that we have implemented in Brazil using this book. It's a book. This book consists of many creativity activities. The title in English I could translate in talk, knock, knock, clean, clean, dealing with motion, playing with thinking through creativity. And this book has been adopted in many schools in my country. Here we have some examples of activities. For example, a new law has substituted the old ID card by a much more personalized card that really shows what kind of person you are. So my name is, but I like to be called. I feel happiness in. What I like most about myself is the word and the number better represent the person I am. In this activity, the students are asked to think divergently. For example, what is the smell of the word darling? What's the sensation of touching the number 50? What is the taste of the color yellow? And so far. So it's very fun when you implement these activities with the students. In this activity, we ask students to draw emotions instead of talking about emotions. So you ask them to draw happiness, sadness, love, anger, etc. And this is a very, very interesting activity. Students usually have fun doing it. We name it mental fitness. The students are asked to invent, for example, 6 exercises to understand German language very well, or 5 leg exercise to improve their imagination, or 5 physical exercise to maintain a good sense of humor. So, and finally, this is think yourself an astrologer, scientist who has the ability to see the past and the future. And finally, the last example, this is activities where the student has to be generous in a creative way. For example, think of many ways to say thank you to someone. How about the school environment? Now we talk about the curriculum and in the environment. How is the school culture towards creativity? To what extent creativity is valued in the school environment? As you mentioned before, creativity has been considered a social, cultural, and contextual embedded phenomenon. So what is the school culture regarding creativity? Here we have some examples of a supportive environment and an inhibiting environment. For example, a supportive environment is the one that celebrates students' creative contributions, support teachers who want to make a difference with innovative practice, and prioritize the development of a sense of ownership and pride in students. On the other hand, an inhibiting environment is the one that teachers' lack of knowledge about pedagogical practice that supported students' creativity is present, restricted choices, low expectation regarding students' performance, traditional as preferable to change, innovation, and knowledge-centered in the past. Well, I think I still have some time. I'd like to share with you some research findings we have conducted in Brazil. The first one, we try to investigate creativity and perception of classroom creativity climate of 107 fourth grade students from open, intermediary, and traditional schools. Our hypothesis is that students from open schools, open pedagogy, alternative pedagogy, will have a more high levels of creativity, and their assessment of classroom climate for creativity will be more positive. So to classify the schools as open, intermediary, and traditional, you use some criteria. Here you can see some of the criteria. And the results indicate no differences among the three groups of students with respect either to creativity or classroom climate perception. So pedagogical methodology was not found to influence students' creativity. So how to explain, how to interpret this result? So in our opinion, this result can be explained by the fact that creativity is a topic that has been more discussed and valued in school nowadays. And we cannot say, to state upfront which methodology is the best. So depend on the students' characteristics and needs, one methodology might be more adequate, more appropriate than others, and therefore promote their creativity. In another study, we investigate creativity and personal barriers for the expression amongst fourth elementary grade school teachers of various degrees of teaching experience. So lack of time and opportunity was the most mentioned barrier by the teachers, regardless their teaching experience. No differences were noticed between teachers with more experience and less experience with respect to creativity. However, students of the most experienced teachers with at least 10 years of teaching experience had a more positive perception of the classroom climate for creativity in comparison to students of teachers who had less experience. Another study, we compare gifted and non-gifted students with respect to the perception of classroom climate for creativity and motivation to learn. The results indicate significant differences between gifted and non-gifted students in only one factor of the scales of climate for creativity in the classrooms. So there are more similarities and differences between the two groups, gifted and non-gifted students. Okay. The only difference was on the factor 2. It was about, I think it was about students' interest in learning. Yes, that's it. Oh, okay. Another study, I'm sorry, another study, No. There is a problem. Okay. Sorry, it's the same study. I'm confused. There are no difference between gifted and non-gifted students with respect to the classroom climate for creativity in general. But when we compare the evaluation of gifted students from regular classroom and program for gifted students, most of the students attend the gifted program. They said that the gifted program was more positively evaluated in comparison to the regular classroom. So the results revealed that the students in general have a high intrinsic motivation to learn than extrinsic motivation, and non-gifted students showed high intrinsic motivation in comparison to gifted students. Well, what kind of future agenda we can propose thinking of fostering creativity in the schools? So here we have some suggestions about the future studies and future actions. For example, I believe it's important to examine the school philosophy, educational policies, curriculum, professional development opportunities, and partnership within and outside the schools and their relationship with creativity. Regarding the PISA assessment, I think it's important to examine the impact of this assessment on the extent to which creativity has been nurtured in schools and its effects on the development of students and teachers' creative abilities and socio-emotional characteristics associated with creativity. And regarding future action, I believe it's necessary to provide more opportunities for pre-service and e-service professional learning to the school teams. And we also, I believe that's important to encourage future teachers to reflect on their own educational trajectory and the current beliefs about creativity. Another point I'd like to highlight is that creativity is not only a skill necessary to effectively solve novel problems, but also a process that promotes individuals' psychological well-being. There is a positive relationship between creativity and psychological well-being. For example, this study conducted by Tang and colleagues found that creativity mediates the relationship between perceived impact of COVID-19 in social well-being. For the Chinese sample, in a study that involved participants from Germany, China, and the United States. But this impact was perceived only by the Chinese sample. And according to the authors, the positive coping effect of creativity was stronger for individuals with more collectivistic views. So results
Denise,
of
you have
study.
4 minutes.
Okay. Well, we have some studies suggesting that creativity is associated with mental health, as I mentioned before. Engaging in creative activities may have therapeutic benefits by promoting flow experience and positive emotions. And I'm finishing. Creativity work seems unlikely to flourish in severely mentally ill patients, and appropriate treatments likely to enhance rather than diminish mentally ill patient creativity. And we conduct a study, one of my students and myself, when we administer some instruments to 3 groups of students: accelerated gifted students, non-gifted students, and gifted students. So we realized that group of gifted students had high scores on creativity when compared to non-gifted students. The results indicate that the Rorschach's a projective test indicates of distorted thinking correlated positively with general creativity index. However, a profile of health, emotion, and social judgment was also found in the two groups of gifted students. This suggests that the gifted students would be imaginative and open to new experience with a great sense of self-esteem and who tend to break patterns and challenge convictions. So I'd like to finish my presentation with a sentence, a quotation from Nelson Mandela that calls attention to the importance of how mistake is seen, how mistake may help fostering creativity. He says, I never lose. Either I'll win or I learn. Thank you.
Denise, thank you very much. And I love that last quotation. It's one of my favorite. Denise, there were some questions, not directly via the chat, but some other people asked me some questions up front. And as I know direct questions in the chat, I'm going to ask you some of the questions that were emailed to me up front.
Okay.
Right at the start of your presentation, you had a slide where you said you talked about the myth associated with creativity. What myth do you mean?
One of the myths I would say is some people believe that creativity is like divine gift. Someone is innate. Someone was born with creativity abilities, and some are not. Others think that creativity is associated with, I would say, craziness, madness. You know, there is a myth of the creative mad genius. So some people tend to associate creativity with psychological problems. So to be creative, you have to have some psychological instability. So I say that these are some of the examples of the myths associated with creativity.
Okay.
And also they usually associate creativity with arts. So to be creative, I have to have artistic abilities, something like that.
Okay. Well, you in the Netherlands would say that you just place the ball directly in front of a goal, so I only have to kick it in. You said some people think that creativeness is innate, as in you're born with the ability to be creative. A couple of months ago, I read the study, and I just tried to recall that study that states that the correlation between a high IQ as above 130 and creativity is not as high as the correlation between IQ between 115 and 130. Have you ever heard of that study, or have you ever heard of those numbers? And how should I interpret those numbers?
Yeah. There are some theories that said that the threshold theory established that 100 until the 100 IQ of 120, there is a positive correlation between creativity and intelligence. Above, you can see this this correlation more. So some people say, some research says that because they are so creative, so they are, you know, something totally divergently that the IQ test cannot capture the cognitive abilities that this person has, you know. So I think that, but some on the other hand, other researchers have questioned these results, saying that you are using IQ tests to assess intelligence. Is it the best way to assess intelligence? So there are some discussion about it, but yes, I have heard of that, Eleanor.
Okay. And there's another question there. Someone emailed me up front, and that was about in the Netherlands, and I don't know how that is in Brazil, but in the Netherlands, executive functioning and especially executive skills are very, it's a hot topic. And we are all teaching our children to become very focused on developing those executive skills. And one could say that, or is it true that one could say that if you are extremely able to inhibit your dominant responses to look around, that it might also kill creativity, so that therefore teaching children executive skills is fine, but keep in mind that you don't kill their creativity, their creative abilities.
Well, yeah, in Brazil, it's a hot topic as well. Executive functions is a fashion topic, and I haven't read results of studies associating functional executive functions and lower creativity. I'm not sure if you can establish this relationship, Eleanor. I think maybe some executive functions may actually help to foster creativity. But I think that's some, not all of them. And I think you have to be careful not to throw the water with the baby, you know?
Yeah.
So, well, executive functions, it's a very objective, a very cognitive, and because creativity has a dimension, a cognitive dimension, but a social emotion as well. So I believe that some of the executive functions may help creativity, but I wouldn't say that if you focus on executive function, you'll be killing creativity. I wouldn't say that. Yeah.
Okay. And the third question that was emailed to me up front was.
But it's a very, very interesting and a very good topic for future studies.
Yeah, and I would love to talk about you a little bit, because I think that flexibility and updating might add to creativity, where an overly trained response to inhibit your responses to look around may kill opportunities to see what's more to explore. So, yeah, it has to do with balance. Let me see. You had that. You had those assessments for the classroom climate, for teaching for creativity and teaching creatively. Can it be used and scored by teachers, or is it only to be used by scientists and researchers?
I think teachers can use this, yes, because they can learn to focus on what actions or what behaviors I can perform in the classroom to help my students to develop their creativity. What can I do for my students? What my attitudes, and I think it's important for teachers to have in mind what are the goals of what I expect from my student, what kind of abilities I could expect from them to develop. And I believe that, I can plan a lesson thinking of maybe I can ask them to, for example, present many ideas. We'll be working on fluence of ideas, one of the characteristics of creativity. So I believe that I think that teaching creatively and teaching for creativity can be implemented in the class and should be implemented in the classroom.
Okay, Denise, we took 10 minutes more, 7 minutes more than we planned to. But from this point, I would really like to thank you for taking the effort to talk us through this topic. Knowing that just as we are, you are English as second language speaker. Thank you for a job very well done. And I think a lot of people will enjoy watching back the webinar. And we'd love to read more from your work and more from your hand. So if you've ever new information for us, I'm just one email away, and reach out to me because we're happy to present it on the website of the Dutch National Knowledge Center.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. Thank you so much for the audience. And I apologize for my English. As you mentioned, it's not my first language, but we try. We try.
Well, you don't have to apologize for your English because it's always better than my Spanish and my Portuguese. I always feel a bit embarrassed that you speak more languages than I do. So, yes, thank you. This is where I stop recording this